Oh, and by the way, the Seymour Hersh thing is getting renowned journalist reports U.S. role in Nord Stream and gets attacked, turned truth about Fetterman and more. Right. You're going to see, that's one of the, whoops, the wrong page. That's a huge part of the right-wing news cycle right now is Seymour Hersh's column, his Substack. And having read it, I will say this. As somebody who's previously respected Seymour Hersh, reading the article and its trite disregard for reality or its I would say, targeted, intentionally incendiary language about people and the U.S. government and the U.S. in general, which makes it come across as a propaganda piece, quite frankly, more, and I think unnecessarily so, if I may. That in reading it, it's so bad that I, quite frankly, it makes me question his other works. Like, understanding the reality of the situation, knowing as much about it as I do, having dived into it, and I still, no one has shaken me in my belief that the Russians did it with a pig. They sent one of these pipeline inspection gauges in there. They've got cameras and sensors all along the fucking thing. If anybody came up and started planting explosives near it or fired a missile, they'd have footage of it. They'd have had sensor data on when the impact happened. They have none of that. And if they had it, they'd release it. Either that or they were just lying about the sensors and they never worked in the first place, which is a possibility. They could have farmed that out to China. But the baseline, capability of that pipeline to see ruptures and leaks and all that kind of stuff, which were, part and parcel to the contract of getting it online in the first place after leaks from Nord Stream 1, there is no excuse why the Russians wouldn't know where it was hit, when it was hit, and who hit it. It makes no sense. So, if they're lying about knowing or not knowing, then the Occam's razor is they blew it up themselves. Simply because they wanted to jettison the gas that was in it, depressurize the gas that was in it in international waters instead of back out through their end because the Germans weren't going to do it. The Germans, because of sanctions, couldn't even, go, we're just letting the gas out for a little while till it deflates. We're not buying it. They have to go, no, we're not even opening it. We're shutting down all the valves on our side. So you got this entire, this pipeline that's pressurized full of natural gas. And the only way it's going to come out of that pipeline is back into Russia, where they've sent everybody who would run that facility off to catch bullets and artillery shells in Ukraine. So there's just a dude minding the fucking hose with a cigarette in his mouth. And they're like, yeah, we got to find a way to deflate this motherfucker. We can refill it with air once it's patched, but in case we ever decide to turn it back on, but we got to get the gas out of this thing. Simple enough. Fly that out there, boom, up it goes. It's just like, come on. Occam's razor. It's the simplest reason. And they could use it as propaganda excuse. Look how much anti-American, anti-West propaganda it's been used to churn up. It absolutely served that purpose. Anybody's like, what would the Russians get out of it? Well, they depressurize basically what's effectively a canister bomb leading right up to one of their natural gas facilities. And they could also blame the West and use it as propaganda against Ukraine and any of the NATO allies and any of the other countries that aren't NATO allies that support Ukraine. Win-win for them. What does the U.S. get out of it? The Germans had already shut the fucking pipeline down. They were already not using it. They had already agreed not to sign on to it. There was no thought that they were going to get back onto it. It wasn't like they were threatening to reopen it or were in negotiations with Russia to reopen it. The only people that had anything to gain blowing the fucking thing up were Russia. It was twofold. Propaganda, as create a false flag and depressurize the tube and get most the gas that was in there out into the international waters where it wouldn't blow up their facility. So looking at Hersh's thing and his kind of just generalized fuck you to the UK, the United States, and the West in general, and the lack of evidence about it, and the single source one guy, which, we're going to find out was Michael Flynn or some shit, just undermines the validity not only of that column, but previous stuff. And I'm like, and that's a fucking shame, because there's always been like right-wing questions about Hersh's play on the My Lai massacre and other stuff. And it would be a shame to find out that the dude has just always been that way. But it's hard not to read his current stuff against that backdrop. That said, I'm going to sign off, guys. Thanks for sticking around.